Alright, Horror Hounds, and welcome to another episode of This Just In. Today we're going to be doing the ins and outs on Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers. We're doing the theatrical version of this. There is a producer's cut out there. I have not watched that one yet, and from my understanding, based on how I like movies to be, I wouldn't like it anyways. I might check it out at some point later on down the road, but for right now, I'm just going to stick with the theatrical cut. And this movie had a pretty good budget thrown its way, which meant that the studio got involved in it, which is probably why it looks the way it does. I did hear that there's kind of a studio version of what they wanted, there's a theatrical version of what they wanted, there's a producer's version of what they wanted. And I've heard that all of those versions are very incoherent on what's going on. And that would be the thing I'll say about this movie is good luck with the plot when you watch it. You know what's going on, you keep up with it, and nothing seems like it's missing any beats. Good for you. You're able to fill in a lot of fucking holes. Alright, so starting with the things I'm in on in this movie. First one is Michael Myers. The mask in this one is probably the best mask since the original 1 and 2, up to this point. Michael's very brutal in this movie. His kills are brutal. Very bloody, gory. He's just got kind of that brutality about him when he walks, when he chases, when he kills. Everything about him is just way better than what we've seen in some of the other movies. In the first one, he wasn't very brutal, but his kills meant something and they were kind of impactful, like I said. In the second one, I felt like some were lazy and then some were pretty good. In the fourth one, I liked the kills in that one. But there's not really a brutality to them, but they're still good kills. Fifth one, they had a couple of cool kills, but this is, up to this point, this is the most brutal Michael Myers has been. And he's very well portrayed in this movie, if you ask me. I like Michael Myers in this one. Another in for me in this movie is the way it's shot. I like the way this film is shot. A lot of the scenes, it has a very good atmosphere to it.
Mommy, it's raining red.
When you think Halloween, this movie is definitely got a nice Halloween autumn feel to it. It feels like how the first movie felt like Halloween season in Haddonfield. This one does a very good job of recapturing that. And some of the stylistic choices for this movie, now that we're in the mid-90s, it had a new flavor to it and a new feel. It didn't have kind of like, oh, we're trying to copycat the original movie. Have some of those same scenes where Michael's kind of standing to the side and looking, and we get to see him in a corner of the shot and everything else past it to see what he's seeing. This one does a much different approach, but I think it works pretty well for this one. I am a fan of how this movie looks. Another thing I'm going to say I'm a fan of is the kills. This, like I said, is the most brutal, and this has some really awesome kills. Two that come to mind are Jamie. Jamie's kill in this movie is awesome. He puts her on this piece of farm equipment, and you can see it. He shoves her on it, and it's sticking through. It's real bloody. And the blood looks good in this movie. And then when she's reaching out to him, he pushes her on it harder, and then he turns it on so that it like kind of grinds her insides and everything. That's a cool kill. The new family that moves into the Myers house, the dad in that one, which was actually... So the Strode family moves into Michael Myers' house, even though Michael Myers killed or tried to kill Laurie Strode. I think in this storyline, Laurie is dead. I think they said that in part 4. But anyways, they move into this house, and it's actually Laurie Strode's uncle. And he's a complete dickbag in this whole movie. He's the kind of guy who runs the house and smack you around if you don't like the way he says shit. He has a really awesome death with the electrocution, and then his head explodes. That was a really cool death. I even like the kill where his wife dies, when Michael just comes at her with, like, she's walking through the sheets and she gets all confused and he hits her with a hatchet and blood splatters everywhere. So much blood on those sheets. And then as a good boy, Michael does take him down to the washer and try to wash him for her. They don't show him do that, but you find him in the washer later, so that's just kind of comical that he was trying to clean up his mess. And then another thing I'm going to give an into is Donald Pleasant's performance in this movie. He doesn't have a big role. He doesn't play in it a whole lot. This is the last movie he ever shot before he passed away, and he died before this movie was even released in theaters. But he does a good job with his role, but you can tell whatever how he was feeling towards the end of his life, it had an impact on it. But at least they didn't turn him into a douchebag like they did in the last movie. And one other thing that's an in for me is this movie does try to take the entire legacy of the last 5 films, excluding, part 3. And they kind of have like some homages to earlier films, like they do bring back, Tommy Doyle. He's in this movie, played by Paul Rudd. Jamie's in this movie. Just some of the, like the sound, the iconic Halloween theme. It's played with a guitar in this one, but it's, they have that theme, and they do have some similar shots of stuff that happened in other movies that kind of show up in this. And I think they do a pretty good job of trying to keep a continuity and tie everything together that they can. Sometimes it does get a little wishy-washy in there, but what are you going to do when you got 3 different people trying to tell you how a movie's supposed to look and nobody can see eye to eye, but yet we got to make some money on this thing? All right, and that's the only ends I have. Originally, I was thinking I was going to put the plot in mix, but I'm just going to go straight to outs, and I'm going to start there with the plot. Like I said, this movie has no clue what the fuck it's doing. No clue. It kind of has a story. Like, we're taking off. We're years into the future on Jamie, and now has a kid. She's pregnant, having a baby, and we kind of follow like the normal beats of a Halloween movie, like Michael's trying to get another member of his family. But then they're trying to explain that tattoo that was on his hand in the last one, and they're trying to explain the Man in Black. And that's part of what they call the Cult of Thorn. And I did hear in the producer's cut they explain the Cult of Thorn better, but still not good. In this one, I don't think they explain it very well at all. Just somehow Michael has to kill this baby, or this baby's getting sacrificed for the better of the community. And that's why Michael was created. And this Man in Black has been kind of telling Michael what to do, controlling him, which, thank you for ruining all of our movies now. Because in the first one he killed, and we have no reason why. He was just angry. Yes, he killed his sister, but that's just his first kill. It doesn't mean he hates his family. It just meant he didn't like her in that moment, or he just went crazy, and guess who was around? In the second one, we find out that he's going after Lori again, not because she got away, but because it's his sister. So there's the family ties part. Then in the fourth one, he's going after Jamie because that's his niece. And as stupid as it is that this guy magically only tries to kill people of his family because you want to keep making movies, but yeah, let's tie it up to where there's only people of the family that he's going to kill. What happens when he kills everybody? We no longer get Michael Myers movies because his purpose is done in life. He can now die. But nope, in this one, he's doing a sacrifice. He's been controlled by another cult leader who's telling him what to do. Making him do this because he's got to do this sacrifice so, blood doesn't rain from the skies, or so we can have good crops. The usual reasons for a good sacrifice. Okay. And then, to finish off the plot in a fun way, at the end when they finally kill Michael Myers, and they beat him and beat him and beat him and beat him and beat him, and I mean beat him and beat him and beat him, they shove like this green ooze, Paul Rudd does, into his neck, like 4 or 5 syringes of it, and then They're beating him with a lead pipe, and they get another one of those syringes in. And then after Paul Rudd's done beating him with the lead pipe a bunch, it looks like he has green coming out of his mask. Like in part 2, he at least had blood come out of his mask because he's a human. But in this one, he's now an alien. So, bet you didn't know he was part of the Aliens and Predators franchises as well. Yeah, I guess when you're in the Cult of Thorn, your blood eventually turns green. But don't worry, because the very ending is Michael Myers' mask is sitting there. Not him in it. He's gone. And we hear Donald Pleasence screaming off screen, and that's them officially relieving him of his duties as Dr. Loomis. They wrote him out of the movies from this point on as they were going to be going forward. So they killed him off screen. This movie does have good kills in it, but fuck those off-screen kills. Especially to a character like Dr. Loomis, of all people. I know he was old, and, this was his last movie before he died. But to drag him through all these movies, and he had some really high points as a great character, a real low point in part 5 for me. But then in this one, all the epic scenes he's had with blowing himself up, and how he could have died in 4, and they brought him back in 5 and made him live, and just time after time after time, and then he gets an off-screen kill, of all characters. I mean, even if he had to use a stunt double to do something to be epic, so that he didn't have to do something real physical to give his character like a proper send-off. I mean, the dude gave you 5 films, and that's what you do. That's just, to me, that was just crap. All right, so since I went over all that stuff, that kind of includes my things that I was out on. The Cult of Thorn, the whole cult thing. I just went over that part. That was dumb for me. The Man in Black ends up being an old colleague of his who we saw in a 2-second clip from Halloween 1. They're pulling it in to kind of tie that bow on that story. I get that, but okay. And as the movie goes along, all these people that are supposed to be helping are plot twist part of the cult. And just the stupid cult idea. I don't understand where this Cult of Thorn was. I know they call this the Thorn Trilogy with 4, 5, and 6. They didn't even introduce the cult in 4. And that's why that's a great movie, because they weren't worried about it at that point. And this one, it's like they started to introduce something in 5, and they had to come up with something, and they just, whatever they did, and it doesn't seem like there was a clear thought on it. And if there was too many hands in one kitchen, guess what? That food tastes like shit. And then the last thing I'm out on is kind of the cast in this movie. They couldn't get Danielle Harris to come back and play the role of Jamie because she didn't want to make shit money for a shit film and only be in it for a shit amount of time. So when the big iconic last 2 movies hero dies, nobody cares. You don't care because you know it's not the same person. And there's no attachment because they don't even make her good in this movie for how long she's in there for. And then I know I said I was positive on Dr. Loomis. I mean, he did have a little bit of parts, but he's not in this movie a lot, and that's not his fault or the director's fault in that sense. But Paul Rudd is Tommy Doyle. You can tell this is Paul Rudd's first movie ever. His acting is atrocious in this movie. I mean, he looks like he's smuggling in a baby when he's running with this baby. He looks like some creeper hunched over, like a troll, who just stole a baby. But everybody just treats him like, hey, that's how he walks, that's normal. When he's leaving a hospital with a baby, he says it's his, but you can tell by the way he's walking, it's not. And then the character who's Loomis's old friend who plays the Man in Black, like the Man in Black was kind of stupid in the last one for how they threw it in a little bit. And the guy who plays him in this one is the same guy who, I remember him from Liar Liar, when Jim Carrey goes into that board meeting. And he tells him he's a pretentious bastard and calls him a dickhead. And he laughs about it. That's how I remember that guy. So I couldn't even take him serious, to be honest. Because that's all I could think of when I saw who it was. And I was just like, oh, this is the mastermind. Okay. And then, like I said, just the cast in general, they're all forgettable. You don't care about them. they're just there to die for some of them. I mean, at least there is some brutal deaths, but even the Strode family that moves in, there's a little kid who kind of has homicidal tendencies. Maybe they're I don't know, like they're trying to create another kid. But in part 4, you did that with a kid, and then in part 5, you completely erased it and gave a shit. So now you want us to expect that you're going to invest in this kid becoming a killer too? We don't believe you now. It's too late. You've gone and fucked that one up. So my overall thoughts on this movie is this movie has some good things. I do think it looks good the way it's shot. I do like the kills, and I do like Michael Myers in this movie a lot. The plot is atrocious. It bounces around so much with so many plot holes. There's things that are happening that make sense at times, and then later on they don't. You can't tell what they were trying to do or where they were going, and it kind of feels unfinished still, even when the movie ends. You're not like, oh, good, we resolved that. Because you didn't. Michael's still alive. Okay, we know that they like making Michael Myers movies, but at least in most of these, you get like a good death scene where it's like, oh, maybe they got him. Not in this one, and not in 5. So, that didn't happen. And then the casting for this movie, I guess when they had a budget, yeah, they spent it on the gore and they spent it on the looks of the film, but they did not spend it on the casting. That's why they didn't get Danielle Harris back. My overall rating for this movie is, I'm going to give this one a 2.5. When I was thinking about it, it has some cool parts to it, and I do like Michael Myers. But back when I watched part 2 and I gave you guys a rating on that, I gave that one 2.75, and I said it was kind of boring. But I would still watch it over this one. So therefore, I cannot give it more than a 2.75. So I'm going with 2.5. All right. So don't forget to give me a like, subscribe if you're not a member, hit the notification bell so you can see when the next video comes out. The next one I will be doing is going to be Halloween H2O, which I do know as a kid I did like this movie a lot. So, fingers are crossed that this is going to be an enjoyable watch again, because the last 2 films were not. 6 was okay. It was serviceable. 5 just was atrocious. All right, till the next one, guys. Rest in peace.